During his campaign, Donald Trump vowed to get revenge on his political opponents and his critics, including Republicans who used to serve him. Well, now that he's won, he's making good on that and just pulled a stunning and incredibly dangerous move by stripping the Secret Service and physical protection away from 4 Republicans who used to serve him, who are all currently under death threats. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Even by Donald Trump standards, this is shockingly petty and incredibly dangerous. So we're going to play some clips here. But for reference, as of now, the 4 Republicans who used to serve Donald Trump, whose physical protection has now been taken from them, include former National Security Advisor John Bolton, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and one of his Republican aides, Brian Hook, and as of the past 12 hours, Dr. Anthony Fauci. And we're going to play some clips of Donald Trump reacting to questions from the press about this move.
Outside.
Why did you remove John Bolton's security clearance, sir?
Because I think there was enough time. It's we take a job. You take a job. You want to do a job. We're not going to have security on people for the rest of their lives. Why should we? I thought he was a very dumb person, but I used him well because every time people saw me come into a meeting with John Bolton standing behind me, they thought that he'd attack them because he was a warmonger.
So you can see the petty response there. Of course, it's interesting, Trump saying, we don't, provide protection for people for the rest of their lives. Donald Trump, as a president and former president, will be the beneficiary of Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. So he really has no credibility on that point, but you can see from his immediate answer, he hates John Bolton. That's why he did what he did. He was then asked about removing protection from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
How do you guys revoke security protections for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook?
Well, the same reason I do. When you have protection, you can't have it for the rest of your life. Do you want to have a large detail of people guarding people for the rest of their lives? I mean, there's risks to everything.
So would you support us trying?
So again, very callous and very specific. People who criticize Donald Trump after serving him loyally, faithfully. One more, because the most recent one was Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. President, the security detail for Anthony Fauci was terminated last night, and I'm wondering if you have any comment on that.
About what?
The security detail for Anthony Fauci was terminated last night, sir. Do you have a comment?
No, I think, when you work for government, at some point your security detail comes off. And, you can't have them forever. So I think it's very standard. If it would be for somebody else, you wouldn't be asking the question. The question is very fair. But, you work for government. We took some off other people, too.
Yeah, people that have criticized you, who used to work for you. This is unusual. This is incredibly unusual, especially because the men whose protection you have now stripped from them are under constant death threats for having served you faithfully, as the New York Times discussed. Trump revoked security detail for Pompeo and others despite threats from Iran. The officials had been part of an aggressive posture against Iran during Donald Trump's first term. So the reason that their lives are in danger, asshole, are because they served you and your administration. President Biden gave them protection to protect them because Biden is morally superior to you, as elected Democrats are, compared to elected Republicans. And then because these people have criticized you in the past, you come in and strip the security away even though the threats remain? Trump revoked security protection for his former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and a former aide, despite warnings from the Biden administration that both men faced ongoing threats from Iran because of actions they took on Trump's behalf, 4 people with knowledge of the matter said on Thursday. Pompeo and the aide, Brian Hook, had been part of an aggressive posture against Iran during the first Trump presidency, most notably the drone strike that killed the powerful Iranian general Qasem Soleimani in early 2020. Trump also remains under threat because of General Soleimani's killing, and his advisors have stressed the seriousness of the situation in the years between his 2 terms in office. Trump repeatedly asked for more protection during those years, including seeking military assets for the final months of the campaign because of the threats from Iran. That kind of protection is usually reserved only for the sitting president, which in that case was President Biden. So again, I want you to understand this. Donald Trump, who will and has received lifelong protection since his first term in office as a former president and now president, he will be protected by Secret Service for the rest of his life, actually asked for increased protection, even though he was a former president, because the same threats that Pompeo and Bolton and Hook are under, he finds so serious for the same reason. And now he's stripping. He's not only not adding to their detail, he's taking what security they have away from them. Trump revoked the State Department security details for Pompeo and Hook on Wednesday, according to a person familiar with the matter, a move that came 2 days after he pulled the Secret Service detail for John Bolton, his former national security advisor. And so again, they go into quotes, which we just saw Trump actually give. Other than former presidents and their spouses, senior U.S. officials are not automatically granted ongoing protection. Protection levels are a function of the threat assessment from the intelligence community. The Biden administration had briefed the new administration about continued threats from Iran to former Trump officials, including Pompeo, Hook, and Bolton, according to a person with knowledge of the matter who, like others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the security issue. Bolton said he was personally notified about the threats. As recently as the end of last week, 2 separate government representatives, 2 separate government agencies called, Bolton said in an interview. They said, our current assessment is that the threat level remains the same as in 2022, when a member of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was charged with an alleged murder plot against Bolton. Hook and a spokesman for Pompeo declined to comment. Trump's decision in all 3 cases, quote, will have a chilling effect on his emerging national security team, says Dr. Charles Kupperman, who served as a deputy national security advisor under Bolton during Trump's first term. Quote, his new team will face many serious national security decisions that will carry far into the future, and their post-government security could easily require long-term security protection based on their recommendations to Trump and the decisions that follow. Trump's national security team must provide guidance based on their assessment of what needs to be done to protect America without regard to their personal security. So again, what he's saying is this creates a perverse incentive. This could threaten national security because people who should be advising Trump not having to worry about themselves because they should be confident that the federal government under Republicans or Democrats will continue to protect them appropriately might now have to worry like, oh shit, I might not be protected if I recommend an aggressive posture against a foreign adversary because I genuinely think it's in America's interest, but I might suffer the consequences. Several Republican senators on Capitol Hill either declined to comment or avoided a reporter asking questions about Trump's decision regarding Pompeo. Senator Mike Rounds, Republican of South Dakota and a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, had terse remarks. We know that there have been known threats made by the government of Iran against him. I don't know what the recommendations were that were given to Trump as to why he would take the security item away. The threat from Iran has been a serious security consideration for U.S. officials. In the fall of 2024, President Biden had his aides warn the Iranians that assassinating a former government official would be considered an act of war, a former senior administration official has said. That warning included Trump, who complained that President Biden was not doing enough to deter Iran by keeping the warnings private. Shortly after Election Day in November, the Justice Department filed charges against a man who allegedly was tapped by Iran to carry out a murder for hire plot against Donald Trump. And so, again, it just goes in this. Pompeo briefly considered running for president himself and suggested that voters wanted solutions, not tweets, an oblique reference to Trump's use of social media. Pompeo endorsed Trump in 2024 and was deeply critical of President Biden. So, again, it just goes on in terms of Trump's pettiness. And we're going to play some clips here. I should also mention, however, since I mentioned Dr. Fauci, who, yes, served in the Trump administration, you may recall during COVID, Fox News reported this year that U.S. Marshals said Fauci had received, quote, countless death threats. A man was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2022 for sending Fauci and other health officials a long series of threats. Folks, this is so bad, it's so egregious, that even the Wall Street Journal, again, a right-wing publication, a sister publication of Fox News, they love Republicans, they love Donald Trump, called this out, their entire editorial board. Trump leaves Pompeo, Hook, and Bolton unprotected. He ends security protection for the first-term advisors Iran has marked for death. Marked for death! The possibility of falling out of Donald Trump's good graces is an occupational hazard for good people who serve in his administration, but this looks like a new low. Trump reportedly has ordered an end to security protection for 3 former advisors, again, because this was written before Fauci's detail was taken from him, who are living under the threat of assassination by Iran. Pray it won't happen, but what if one of them now gets attacked? And it goes on to basically regurgitate what we read in the previous article. If Iran commits violence against any of these men, Trump won't be able to escape some responsibility. Also, what is Secretary of State Marco Rubio supposed to think about the boss's refusal to protect his predecessor? He probably should be pretty damn worried, but unfortunately Marco Rubio is too much of a coward to do anything about it in terms of raising his objections to Donald Trump. I want to play a couple of clips as well from John Bolton about this because he kind of reveals 2 things. And in this first clip, he makes a pretty stark contrast between Donald Trump and President Biden, whom Bolton viciously criticized during his term.
Look, it's up to President Trump. It's his decision. It's just the wrong decision. And it's based, I think, on the fact that he knows very well and doesn't like that I criticize him and that he's had disagreements with Mike Pompeo. It's just that simple.
So you've been given no indication that the threats against you have decreased?
That's correct. And I may say when President Biden made the decisions again, and I can't speak for the others, but in my case on the Secret Service, I can't believe he was delighted with the fact I routinely criticized almost every national security decision he made. And his advisors felt the same way. But what they did, and I give them credit for it, and I'm not embarrassed to do so, they put what they thought was the national interest first above politics, that these were former officials who had been carrying out their official duties, and a foreign power, a hostile terrorist state, was threatening for that very reason.
It's unacceptable. Again, noting the contrast, the moral superiority of President Biden and the elected Democrats over Donald Trump and elected Republicans. And again, I actually want to drive this home too. This is another clip from John Bolton's interview with Caitlin Collins, in which Bolton reveals that even anonymously, some members of the Trump administration are not happy about this cruel decision.
Have you heard from anyone who worked with you in round 1, or any Republican lawmakers now who say, you know, this is outrageous and I disagree with this decision? Have you heard that privately from anybody?
I've heard it from a lot of people, and you know, I think it's a reflection of Trump's character or lack thereof. It's just very straightforward.
Have you heard it from anyone who's working for Trump right now?
The answer to that is yes. You'll understand why I wouldn't give you their names.
Wow. So you have heard from, and yeah, I get that, but you have heard from someone who is currently working for Trump that says they disagree with his decision to yank your security and Pompeo's security.
Somebody who works on his political operations, yes.
I mean, what to say? So the threats have not persisted. Biden put country above party, above politics. Donald Trump is doing the opposite. Again, it's hard not to see this as a deliberate, petty act of tactical, very selective revenge, a life or death scenario for the Republicans and career officials like Dr. Fauci who serve this man. They are under threat, including Dr. Fauci, because of their service to Donald Trump. Them working for Donald Trump is what put them in danger, be it on national security, foreign affairs, or managing the COVID crisis. And Donald Trump is so pissed at them that he would rather put their lives literally in jeopardy than do the right thing. As Maggie Haberman, New York Times reporter, and somebody who is known as the Trump Whisperer because of her unparalleled contacts into Trump world, this is how she put it.
How much do you think that's going to motivate what Trump does in his term?
Look, Jake, time will tell. He spent a number of months in the lead up to Election Day insisting that success would be his retribution, after initially suggesting retribution would be retribution, and at various points posting on his social media website suggesting various people should be punished or jailed or so forth. We won't know until time goes on. So far, he is taking pretty aggressive moves that are clearly targeting people who he perceives as enemies, even if it doesn't relate to the investigations he was just talking about. But, for instance, stripping the protective security details from Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and another aide at the State Department. those are, hard not to see as, some form of retribution. But we won't know for a bit. He is clearly, as you say, very angry, and he is
This is what we are. We have made a petulant, narcissistic, moron child the most powerful man on earth, and he has a vengeance streak a mile wide. Literal life and death situations, which would be bad enough if he had done it to Democrats or investigators. It would be bad enough and unacceptable, period, full stop, even then. But what makes it even more despicable in some ways is that he is jeopardizing the lives of people who served him, whose lives are under threat because they served him, and he doesn't give a damn because they've criticized him. Pathetic. That's where we are. This is where his focus is. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.